For a long time, I've been warning about a coming mini hyperinflation in America, and I still believe that it's coming. I'm going to share a story with you, and then I'm going to tell you a story or facts that I don't think that even Donald Trump himself knows about. And when we're talking about inflation, the most dangerous type of inflation there is, the one asset class that goes up, if or when it goes up, it causes chaos in not only economic markets, but on the streets. It leads people to rioting, and that is food inflation. When food prices soar, the lower and the middle class, lower middle class, and middle class riot. Right now, there's a story at a zero hedge. Global food prices hit a 19-month high as upward momentum sparks fear of stickiness. Now, I love that word of stickiness. It's like transitory. What Jerome Powell came out in the beginning when I started this channel, he was talking about inflation's not going to be around the entire country. It'll be transitory. It'll move from here or there. And I came out and said, absolutely not. It will not be transitory. It will be the entire country. Now, I've also been warning about this hyperinflation that's coming. And the last 4 years, our government has done nothing but absolute lie to our faces about inflation. All right. And when the Federal Reserve manipulates the rates and doesn't let the real market do things, what you see is the real market does something. I'll give you an example. When the Federal Reserve came out with that massive, 50 basis point rate cut in September, I believe it was, or August, what you saw was the 10-year bond actually rise. Where most people over time have come to think, because it 9 times out of 10, it does happen. When the Fed lowers rates, the bond market lowers. When the Fed raises rates, the bond market eventually comes up higher. However, this time it diverged. And the reason why is because bond investors are incredibly intelligent and they knew they were being lied to by the government. And so they were not going to accept lower rates for giving the government money at a loan. All right. Well, this food price increase that's happening around the world is going to come to America. And again, I'm going to share a secret that most people don't understand about America and the food supply that even Trump doesn't understand. I think it's going to smack the presidency in the face. All right, so here we go. It says the global benchmark for food commodity prices rose in November, reaching its highest level since April of 2023. The increase was driven primarily by a surge in vegetable oil prices. What's particularly concerning is that global food prices have resumed an upward trajectory this year, climbing steadily since the first quarter. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations Food Price Index, which tracks international prices of a basket of global traded foods, averaged 127.5 in November, which is up 5.7% from a year ago, but still 20% below its record high in March of 2022. Well, why was that in March of 22? Well, it's because of the COVID disruption and the supply chain disruption. And for a very, very short time, you saw a spike right here. Okay. And you maybe look at this chart and go, Ninja, why do I care about this? Well, this is why. First off, since 2020 to 2022, we have got a couple of massive global conflicts going on, which are disrupting trade. Secondly, those global disruptions are now escalating because the current president is trying to push us into World War III. That is truth. If you agree with that, type 1. If you think that's fake news and the ninjas just trying to stir the pot, type 2. And then look below and see if everyone agrees. Now, it says here, again, the biggest driver of this overall index is the vegetable oil prices, which jumped 5.7% in November versus October. This marked the second noticeable increase in 2 months and a 32% rise compared to the same month 1 year ago. So there is an example of how vegetable oil rising, spiking in price. We've seen certain commodities like sugar already hyperinflate, right? Coffee is hyperinflated. When you look at the general agreement or consensus amongst scholars and economists, because there's no clear-cut definition of hyperinflation, the consensus is multiple quarters with a 25% rise in costs quarter over quarter, usually lasting 3 quarters or more. That is the general consensus. Most people don't even know there's not an actual set standard for hyperinflation because there's so many different types and causes for hyperinflation. Type 3 if you didn't realize that. As a matter of fact, I think that's really exciting news, and I challenge you to go today and start Googling hyperinflations from the past because they're all so different, and then find out what people think a hyperinflation really is, all right? So now, we've just shown you how based off this data, how sorry, the sun's coming in, it's getting a little bright, but, thank you, Lord, for the sun rising every morning. Um, so vegetable oil prices can pull an entire index of food costs higher, right? So now let's talk about this secret in America that most people don't understand. And it is really interesting that there's not a lot of people on this because the title and what I'm saying, the algorithm is constantly looking and searching for what I'm talking about, trying to figure out where to put it. And it's interesting that there's very little people on, probably the worst performing live stream. It's okay, in months and months and months. So in America, it is legal for other countries to own land in our country. I think that is criminal. I do not think that should be allowed. Okay. Um, so what has been happening, and I have experience in this because for a short time I owned a real estate brokerage with a couple of partners that focused on agriculture property. Okay. And what we were doing was taking ag land and selling it to hedge funds. What I learned in that is that hedge funds were these third party companies were formed to be intermediaries for China, for Saudi Arabia, and other countries around the world, and they would buy this farmland, and the third party company, which is an American company but they were working solely 100% for another country, would develop the land, and then those crops could get sold here, but mostly they were sold back to their country. And what's going on is that countries around the world are buying up farmland, and Saudi Arabia actually has headquarters set up in California alone because they have so much land, and they're shipping that food over to their country, right? And so what's happening in our country alone, it's causing food prices to rise because a lot of our food comes from other countries, and the government has figured out a stealthy tax to bring in to tax that food that comes into you, and so you're paying higher prices in so many different ways. Whereas there is so much abundance here in America. If and here's the other thing, the sad thing, most people don't understand how the Dust Bowl worked, where Congress would pay farmers not to farm, right? This has been going on, this war, for over a century, and well over a century actually. And they would pay you not to farm because they had interest, or special interest groups had interests in specific farms, and they wanted the cost of food to go higher. So they would just pay farmers to sit down back on their farmland and do nothing. Well, they've also created that in a way where they know, well, if Saudi Arabia owns this massive farm and they're growing, wheat or rice or whatever, and it's going over to another country, well, that doesn't affect my farm's, costs. So it keeps those costs high. I would love to see if Trump would walk in and go, no more. No more is it legal for a country to own land here. And a lot of the ways they've been hiding it is through these third party companies, because the third party company will, we own the land. We're an American company. Like, where'd your funding come from? Show us. And they go, it came from China. All right, you're done. You're done. You are no longer allowed to ship food from this country, out of this country. The food must be shipped, stay in America. You know what that would do to food prices? It would collapse them. They would drop like a rock. And then the excess should be shared with other countries. We should help other countries. But the thing is, right now we're not, and it's hurting the taxpayer, you, the American citizen, you, the worker that works hard and just wants to provide a good, strong, family unit. You just want to provide for family. Food is what dictates everything in our economy. If our country is not well fed, our country is not thinking well. It's not in its right mindset. And just look at the price of gas. Most of the cost of gas is taxes, right? When you look at other countries that either subsidize or just don't tax their fuel, um, you look at how cheap gas is. How would your life, do me a favor, uh, type 10 if you feel that if food prices were half and gas prices were half that they were right now, that your life would be totally different. Your financial outlook would be totally different. And the reason why I say that is because I believe everyone, it would agree, no matter how wealthy you are, just those two things being half. Remember, the majority of wealth in our nation, yeah, they give you those charts where it's the 1%, right? But the actual wealth, the majority of the money, the power, the energy, the financial energy that comes out of this country is actually produced by the middle class. So if we were to lower the food and gas prices by merely taking the tax away from gas and turning around and saying, "Oh yeah, the other countries, you're not allowed to produce food in this country and ship it over to yours. It's staying here until we drop food prices a certain level, and then we'll share the abundance." Or this is the other thing. This is 100% my belief. I think that farms should be 100% American owned and non-conglomerate. I We need to put the power of the farm back into America's hands. And if you agree with that, type 100. And you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to try and get this video in front of Vivek because I think it's very important. So I got a buddy that's got his phone number, and I'm going to try and get this in front of him. I'm going to keep this short then. I hope you guys have a great day. Yakinama Ninja is out.